I'm going to be talking about how we can solve the physical inactivity epidemic in our children. And it's probably not going to be full of light and lots of laughter. It's actually going to be quite a somber message. My clicker doesn't seem to be working. Okay, great. So, physical activity, basically we know it's good for us, it's good for our children. Physical and mental health, and also academic ability. How much do we need for those under 5? Anyone wants the minimum recommendation for a 4-year-old? Does anyone know? No one? 60 minutes? It's actually 180 minutes a day for those under 5. We should know this, right? If we're supposed to be promoting physical activity for young children, we should know this. And interestingly, the recommendation goes further. It basically says there should be no lengthy periods of inactivity except when they're sleeping. Remarkable recommendation. What about those between 5 and 17? It is 60 minutes per day, which many people are trying to achieve. However, that moderate to vigorous physical activity. However, 3 days should be vigorous activity. And many programs don't actually hit the vigorous activity portion of that recommendation. And 3 days per week should be bone and muscle building activity. Again, lots of programs only focus on the aerobic component. What should they be doing for 60 minutes? There should be a focus on the movement quality, on physical literacy, not just the amount of calories burnt. It should be age appropriate. They should be developing their motor skills, the skills that will carry them forward throughout life. There should be social interaction, there should be emotional intelligence building, there should be a lot of diversity, it should be inclusive, everyone should feel as if they can play a part. It's a global problem. The World Health Organization states that 81% of school-aged children do not meet the minimum recommendation. 81% globally. That was in 2010, and it's worse now. Boys versus girls, 78% do not meet the requirement as boys, and it's 84% in girls. So boys fare a little bit better than girls globally. It's a global epidemic. Looking at the UK, when children are self-reporting or adults are reporting on their behalf, about 1 in 3 children meet the guidelines. When they're wearing an accelerometer, only 8% of UK children meet the guidelines. And as I mentioned in my talk yesterday, accelerometers only give us part of the picture. It does not cover the bone, muscle building, resistance, strength training part of the requirement. So many of our children are nowhere near hitting the recommendation. My background, I used to be a programmer. I worked for Microsoft in the early 90s. I was headhunted by an investment bank. They paid a lot more money, and that's where I stayed for quite some time. I became sick, I was very sedentary, and I certainly didn't have a love affair with exercise. This is me now. I certainly do have an appreciation for movement and getting outside and enjoying nature. But, you know, for many of us, working out isn't working out. I have a TED talk on this topic. Why are many of us not getting the message, not taking the exercise pill? This is why. Well, certainly in my case, we tell everyone that exercising is exciting and lots of fun. But I felt like this lady here. You know, I didn't go to the gym 3 times a week, even though I paid the membership to do so. And exercise was often punishing and painful. No pain, no gain. Not much pleasure. So I set about creating a program for myself that was about play, that was about joy, that was about excitement, that reminded me of my experiences as a kid, when I could play all summer long, and wasn't worrying about muscle soreness, wasn't worrying about developing skills and being performant. The only focus for me as a child was playtime. But most of us do not understand what play is. As a definition, if you were to describe what play is, you may say, oh, I think play's fun, there's something joyful about it, it's something you do when you have some spare time. But there's some great definitions out there. This is by Dr. Stuart Brown, who is a professor of play, a psychiatrist who studied play since the 1950s. And he states that the opposite of play is not work, it's actually depression. Without play, there'd be no art, no comedy, no fiction, no works of art, no laughter, no joy. That's the importance and relevance of play. And depression could be termed as self-imposed hibernation. I don't want to get outside of my cave to go out and play. That's what depression is being termed as in the research. So what are the 5 attributes of play in terms of play behavior? 1, it tends to be something that you volunteer into. You're not forced to do. Most of our play activities for children, we force them to do it. They tend to be highly repetitive. If you're playing, you tend to find an activity that you like and you want to keep doing it. You could almost play it forever. There's no end point based on your own choosing. There's a lack of purpose. If you ask a child sometimes, why are they playing a particular game, they'll just say, because, just because. I'm having a good time, it's fun. That's the only reason why. That's the goal, is how I feel now in the present. It's non-functional. So by this I mean, if I'm running, this might be a functional run. Efficient, very soft, very great for my joints, very graceful. Non-functional would be this, which is what kids do when they're running. Not very functional, but it's enjoyable. And also there's a state of being stress-free. So if you're highly stressed, it's very difficult to be in a play state. What are the 3 types of active play? The first is social play, social interaction, developing rapport, creating bonds, communication. The second is object manipulation. What can I do with this object? What can I create with this object? What can I combine with other objects to create something else? And the third is locomotion. How can I get from A to B, from A to B? And I would disagree in some respects to the previous presenter on this driver for movement only being about survival. Because actually there's another driver for movement, and we see it in all animals, and that's play. The very youngest of children will blow bubbles, only a few weeks old. They will create play experiences without being taught what to do. A young child will be driven to explore their environment without being told to do so, because it's instinctive. We have an instinctive driver to explore the world around us. We have ludic genes, we have play genes that are part of our DNA. And this isn't just a human experience, it belongs to all animals. I'm not talking about this new tier, even though arguably they are playing on a Sony PlayStation, but looking at the research, even T-Rexes, there's evidence that T-Rex is playing. And again, even in this example here, it wasn't just about survival. They found that T-Rexes would play with discarded bones. They would eat, then they would use those bones to play 65 million years ago. So there was optional reasons to move that had nothing to do with external pressures. It was actually about joy. But we know what play is when we see it or when we experience it. Here's an example. This is friends, Phoebe and Rachel. Rachel in the blue, she's running, she's exercising, she's highly motivated, very serious, breathing in a particular way, wearing the right outfit, wearing the right training shoes. Phoebe is having fun. she's playing. She doesn't care what she looks like. That's the difference between playing and running. And arguably, one of those is something we're more inclined to do, or not, as the case may be. But I certainly know what's more enjoyable just by witnessing this. So my definition of play is not the activity, but the attitude you have. And if you are in a playful state, if you present yourself in a playful manner, that in itself defines what play is. So play has deep evolutionary roots. Play precedes ourselves as human beings. And it doesn't just present itself in humans or mammals, but across all cultures, across all species. It's a common experience. It's part of our physical and mental development. And it can rarely proceed without it being fun and joyful. Again, a significant body of evidence in relation to this. But play isn't always about fun. Imagine I'm 5 years old, 6 years old, and I'm playing. Whilst I'm playing, I use visualization. I use my imagination. And sometimes my imagination is actually quite morbid. So I may imagine that I want to jump, and here I have a pit of snakes. And if I jump in, I will get bitten by these snakes. So it's really important that I clear this, and I might decide to balance. And there's no joy on my face. I'm not laughing as I do this. There's lots of focus. I'm very involved and present in that moment. So play is also a very serious matter. And that's something, as parents, we sometimes fail to realize. We see play as purely something that's done as superfluous activity, whereas actually for a child, it's very, very important. Here's a statement by Fred Rogers from the US, talking about the importance of play. And for a child, it's so serious, it's so important. For them, play is work. That's the work of childhood. And it's extremely serious. In terms of participation for them. So let's take a step back. Outdoor play in the 90s compared to 2007 in the UK. In the 1990s, 71% of children had a significant amount of time playing outside without adult supervision. In 2007, only 21% of children had that experience. In 2017, it's even lower. It's about 8% now in the UK. Children will want to be superheroes. Unfortunately, children are getting weaker. In 1998, not that far back, 1 in 20 children couldn't support themselves, body weight hand. 10 years later, 1 in 10 couldn't support themselves. There's been a 26% drop in arm strength, the drop in grip strength. And those factors aren't just affecting them and their health at that age, but it also actually leads to differences in premature aging, in longevity, and chronic lifestyle disease as you age. What about climbing trees? You're 3 times as likely to be admitted to hospital in the UK and the US, and I'm sure it's similar wherever you're from. You're 3 times more likely to be admitted to hospital falling out of bed than you are falling out of a tree compared to a generation ago. 3 times more likely to do so. And I'm not talking about bunk beds. These are just your average, normal beds that kids fall out of and they have no bodily awareness but to get injured and to be admitted to hospital. Children have lost their right to free roam. This is looking at some research at how far children are allowed to go from their home without parental supervision. In 2007, it was 30 meters. Probably you could go to your parental car and back without parents supervising you. In 1990, it was 300 meters. maybe the road that you lived on, maybe your back garden. You could go without parents having to supervise you. In 1965, it was 3 kilometers from your home, without anyone knowing what you were doing. In 1940, it was 10 kilometers, 6 miles away from home. Remarkable difference in how we entrusted our kids just a few generations ago into comparison to what we do now. 75% of children have less time outdoors than prison inmates. 75%. I'm hoping some of you are alarmed by that stat. We give prisoners more free time to roam outside than we do our kids. We value the importance of physical activity for prisoners, but not for our children. How's it impacted their performance? A kid in 1975, the average kid in 1975, can run 1.5 kilometers 90 seconds faster than a kid of today. Heart health has declined 5% per decade. Our solution, many times, is structured play. That means we have a specific time and place, specific location. It's organized by adults, it's delivered by adults, it's coached by adults. There's coach sporting activities. And 25% of our time, or our children's time, should be spent doing these type of programs. The other 75% should be unstructured play, which unfortunately doesn't happen. It tends to be just the 25%, which becomes 100% of their play time. What does unstructured play mean? It means self-directed. No one's telling them what to do, including adults. We are not the best at making decisions as to what children should be doing in terms of free play. That's one. Secondly, it should be spontaneous. They'll do it when and where they choose to do so. They will do a wide array of physical activities. They will build forts and dens. They will climb trees. They'll play hide and seek. They'll play tag. They will always include a risky element. They're not looking for safety when they're playing. They're looking to challenge themselves and to play with risk, to risk assess, to resolve conflict, to work as a team, to work out what their skills, what their strengths and weaknesses are. They're also seeking joy, pleasure and fun, and this all comes about through unstructured play. And those benefits, unfortunately, do not come about from a structured play environment. So here are some other benefits of unstructured play. The free play environment actually does transmit and transfer to a sporting environment. It builds rapport, it helps them resolve conflict, both on and off the field. It improves creativity in the classroom. They're better able to make decisions, better able to make decisions around their free time. It contributes to healthy brain development. They're less likely to be siloed, more likely to be free thinkers, more likely to have an appreciation of different ideas than their own. So what about programs that we're implementing into schools where we see that there's some success? Many of us are delivering these programs. And there is a slight problem. One is, this isn't in the UK, but again it's been replicated in lots of studies globally, children suffer up to 80% reduction in cardiorespiratory fitness during the summer holidays. So all the good work that some of you are doing with your school programs, finishing up in May, June, July of a particular year, come September, come middle of September, most of those gains have disappeared. Because that activity that you're doing at school, they're not doing much at home, and then during the summer holidays, they're pretty much inactive. And poorer families are 18 times more likely to be suffering from this discrepancy in fitness level compared to families with more income. And there's lots of research, this is in 2016 published in The Lancet, that current physical activity interventions for children do not work long term. 6 months, 12 months, 12 weeks, we try this for 1 year, we have a small pilot program, all really successful. but sustainability of these programs are remarkably poor in the literature. So let's talk about something a little bit more positive, about active play and how it affects our mental state of children. So we have endorphins. So endorphins are released immediately when you're playing. When you're working out, when you're exercising, endorphins tend to be released at the end of activity. So you feel good immediately when you're in a play state. Dopamine, so this risk-reward hormone, because play encourages risky behavior, and working out, is this possible, yes or no? Can I do this, yes or no? You have an appropriate dopamine response. It isn't like the one you get from a smartphone, where you don't have to do much to get that dopamine hit. When you're playing, you have to do something. You have to weigh up, is this something I can do or not? Can I climb this tree? I reckon I can climb it, but can I actually get down? So you're constantly asking yourself those questions, and if you do get a dopamine response, it tends to be based on a calculated risk with a significant reward. Cortisol, the stress hormone. So when you're playing, you have a reduction in cortisol. When you're working out, when you're really kind of going to performance, you can actually get elevated cortisol, elevated stress. So if you're in a stressful work environment, then you go to a stressful gym environment, you can actually stay in a hyper-stressed state. Serotonin, that's the feel-good hormone. Activated mainly outdoors, mainly activated by sunlight. Going outside to play first thing in the day and playing all day elevates serotonin response. And oxytocin, the love hormone, the cuddle hormone. This is activated through touch, which is why a lot of childhood games have touch as part of it. Playing tag, piggyback riding, helping each other around. This is part of the oxytocin release. Let's look at some play histories of some famous sports people. Wayne Gretzky. Most specialists today, if they partake in a sport, they tend to specialize at a very early age. Get coached from a very early age to become a master. Wayne Gretzky, one of the greatest ice hockey players of all time, didn't specialize in ice hockey. He played everything else but ice hockey, even though he was fantastic at this sport. He used a tennis ball with his, instead of a puck, because he recognized that that would give him better performance when he was playing for real. He would draw out and map out what he should be doing. He had a very playful approach to his game that many people couldn't work out. Jerry Rice, an American football player, one of the greatest receivers of all time. When he was 9 years old, dreaming about being an American football player, he used to play under his bed sheets with a ball, and he couldn't see, and he used to throw the ball around and try to get a feel for the ball, and it helped him in his ability much later in life. The Williams sisters, have you ever wondered why they mastered such an amazing serve? I mean, they have serves just as good as many of the men in elite competition. And what's incredible is how they developed their serve was their father watched them one day throwing the tennis rackets. And of course he wanted to discipline them and say, you're damaging the rackets. But he saw that they were developing remarkable throwing ability. And he used that, he bought lots of rackets, and they actually just started throwing rackets around to develop their serve. So play was an important part of their performance later in life. But this isn't about elite sports persons. We all have this play history. I have one. Most of my childhood was about play. Hopefully, most of your childhoods were about play. However, in a very short space of time, many of us sitting here deprive our children of the experience that we had as kids. Many of us will say, I had a great time as a kid, playing outside all summer long. Parents saying, get outside and play, don't come back until it's time for dinner. But as a society, there's been a shift. We no longer enable our kids to have this free play time. So, we can recapture joy, because it's part of our DNA. It's part of evolution to provide us this ability to interact and respond appropriately to our environment. We can trust our kids to make the right decision, as we did even just one generation ago. What about technology? Isn't that going to save us? Technology is going to be the savior of humanity. This is going to be the solution for the physical inactivity epidemic. I disagree. And I love technology. I used to be a programmer. I have an Xbox. I play a lot of games on it. But it's not going to be the savior. And one of the reasons I say that is because, do you remember the Nintendo Wii that was really, really popular? Everyone had one. Now no one uses it anymore. Pokemon Go. 2 years ago, every media outlet was talking about this changing the global approach to movement. All kids are outside, walking over cliffs, walking for miles. They now have something to do using this device. No longer a part of most children's lives. Technology only seems to give us very short-lived, faddish benefits from promoting physical activity. Most people who buy a Fitbit put them in the kitchen drawer and don't use them. That's the reality. They're waiting for the upgrade. It entices us for a short space of time. Technology really isn't the solution. And this is another reason why. Because most technology seduces us to be sedentary. The PlayStationary, sit here, be engrossed, use me for convenience. Humans prize convenience. So technology enabling that, make it easier for me to do this. That's what technology does. But that seduction takes us away from what evolution gave us in terms of our ability to move. So we need to go backwards to move forwards. That's what we should be doing. We need to recognize that there is a driver to move that is within our DNA. And that driver isn't just about survival. It's also about celebration. People don't just dance because they want to copy each other's movement patterns. They dance for celebration. They dance to have a good time. They dance for mating, to mate with other people. You know, there's an important part of pleasure that is part of the movement process. And I would suggest that if we take a little bit of a view back to our recent past, we'll get some of the answers as to what we need to be doing for our children today in the present, and reintroducing a more play-safe environment. So in closing, play was a part of our evolutionary history. Homo sapiens, pre-Homo sapiens, Homo hominids were all involved in this play state. Play was a significant part of our recent past. Play deprivation harms our children psychologically, mentally, socially, and physically. Lots of research on that. And this is why I propose that play must play a significant role in our future. And most of that has to be directed by the children themselves. Thank you very much.
Showing the distance young people can travel from their home.
Yes.
Given a large percentage of that is based on safety and travel, have you been to any areas that have managed to overcome the distance that young people are able to travel from their home without adults?
Yes, so there is a big driver now, community-led driver by parents in certain schools to stop this kind of helicopter parenting that is commonplace now. The best example is actually in Utah, in the US. So in Utah, in the US, they've actually passed a state law called the Free Range Act, which is basically enabling young children to be able to free roam without child protection services being called, you know, without parents not being chastised for letting their children play. And I suppose, of course, there are more concerns about kids' safety now. There are hazards that didn't exist 25, 30 years ago. But I think it just means we've got to have a more unified, community-based approach to ensure that we do have safe spaces, that we do have collaboration between local councils and schools and parents to ensure that our kids can go out and play. But you know, I used to feel that I used to think that this was purely about a safety issue. But there are some parents that will not let, if their kids are playing in the back garden, they have to be in the kitchen window looking at their children, even though they're in a safe community. I've been to gated communities in the States where no one can get into those communities, but they still won't let their kids go out and play by themselves. So, we need to change this. We've gone too far in the other direction. In the UK, there are lots of initiatives now trying to encourage street play, free play, removing traffic for a particular day, so kids can go out and play sports in the street, for example. So yes.
The gentleman at the back in a check shirt, send a mic over there.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your wonderful presentation. I'm wondering what do you think about the recess recommendations in connection with the unstructured play problem in schools, in school environment?
I'm an advocate for any increase in physical activity is a good thing. However, if the increase in physical activity is only structured, is only with adult supervision, is only indoors because it's too cold outside, that's a problem for our kids because there are issues with developing resilience. If I run indoors and I run outside, the health benefits of doing the same activity outside magnify exponentially. Everything from vitamin D from the sun to improvements in my immune system by being outside, seeing nature, temperature regulation. There are all these benefits that come about by just being outside. And kids tend to do more vigorous activities when they're by themselves. So even as adults, even as myself coaching kids, I do go into schools. It's really remarkable what teachers will say, these kids are not allowed to do that. They're not allowed to get out of breath, for example. They're not allowed to touch each other. This is not allowed. And so if we have this climate of fear where children feel uncomfortable playing traditional games like tag or chase or climbing or playing, you can't skip. These are being given to schools. There are some schools around the world that will not allow children to skip because they may fall, they may cut their knee. So I think there's this culture of fear that we have to roll back. And there is a sweet spot where we can say, okay, let's not go crazy and do whatever you want, anarchy, but let's have opportunities for kids to be able to have some free play without adults being around. Let's give them some trees to climb. Let's give them some outdoor space that is their own. Let's give them some trust to be able to make the right decisions for themselves. And as parents, we need to really change our approach because as adults, we feel we know best. And in this situation, I think we don't. And that's why many of our solutions are failing long term. Lots of these programs have been running for years, but physical activity is still climbing. We've got more technology, we've got more programs, we've got more diversity of options available than ever before. Kids are not gravitating to them because I feel that's not what they need.
Thank you. Anybody else? Time for maybe one more question? Oh, there we go.
Thank you. So we're obviously on the other spectrum with the technology kind of things.
And it's great, it's lots of fun.
Absolutely. So what we look a lot at is the flow state. I mean, everybody's like, when you're in the zone, which is exactly what you're proposing. You play and you forget everything else and you do it for hours. What would be your prime examples of, because I'm thinking of what actually can people take home, how to put kids into the flow state, like while leading them, because you want to let them go free, but at the same time you want to help them to reach that little thing. So what, with all your travels and everything, what are the 2-3 things, apart from technology, that you would say enable that in the best way?
I suppose we have to create an environment that will enable them to make that decision for themselves. So it can't always be self-appointed, like, okay, I'm going to do this for you so you can now play and hopefully you get into the flow state. I'm sure many of us know what it's like when you buy a present sometimes for your nephew or niece, the latest kit, and sometimes they're more interested in the box than they are the very expensive device. So in that instance, they found their flow state themselves. It's not, you cannot actually enter the flow state with somebody else directing that for you. It has to be self-chosen, it has to be driven by an internal locus of control. So we just need to pass back some of that control back to our children. And I think, yes, technology can be useful to facilitate some of those experiences. And I said I love the immersion in technology, but just think about this. The most amazing graphical, sound-based environment you can create with technology should still feel a poor relation to real life. The real smells, the touch. So very young children have this fascination already. You know, they can look at a leaf a million times and go, oh my goodness, this is amazing. This is amazing. This is amazing. As adults, we teach them not to appreciate being in the moment. And I think that's the lesson that we want to be taking home away with us, is actually that present moment children have by default. They're mindful by default. We don't need to teach them meditation and mindfulness. They have this if we enable and allow them to experience that for themselves. Thank you.
That's just a few bits of signposting. So, in this space, in Patra, we've got discovering new perspectives on physical activity promotion among school children. That's the track taking place in here. And then in the bar top